The sky that evening was heavy with clouds, a dark grey blanket that stretched over the little mountain town of Elmsridge. The cold wind carried the smell of rain and pine, whispering against the windows of a small, creaky wooden house standing alone at the edge of the forest. Inside, Martha Hale, a widow in her late 50s, sat beside a flickering kerosene lamp, knitting an old scarf she didn't really need. She had lived alone for 7 years since her husband passed away. Her children had moved to the city, and though they sent her money sometimes, they never sent what she missed most: company. The silence had become her closest companion. That night, thunder rolled across the sky like a warning. She sighed and whispered, "Another lonely night." But before she could reach for her tea, there came a faint knock at the door. She frowned. Nobody ever visited this late, or ever really. The knocking came again, louder, desperate this time. Martha rose, pulling her shawl tight, and opened the door. Rain poured outside, blurring everything into silver streaks. Standing there was a small boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, soaked to the bone, clutching a worn-out backpack. Behind him stood an elderly woman, trembling under the weight of a drenched coat. "Please," the old woman gasped, "we're lost. Our car broke down on the road. We've been walking for hours." Martha's eyes widened. "Oh dear. You'll catch your death out there. Come in, quickly." She ushered them inside, closing the door against the storm. The boy's teeth chattered as he looked around the cozy, dimly lit room. Martha quickly grabbed a towel and handed it to the woman. "Thank you, child," the woman said softly, though her hands trembled with age. Martha smiled. "I'm no child anymore, but you're welcome. Sit by the fire. I'll make tea." As she moved about, putting the kettle on and gathering dry clothes, she couldn't help glancing at them. The old woman had a graceful air about her, her posture, her soft voice, the way she spoke to the boy. Not like someone poor or wandering. The boy, meanwhile, had curious eyes, the kind that looked at everything with both wonder and caution. When they were settled, Martha asked gently, "Where were you headed before the storm?" The old woman sighed. "We were on our way to see some property outside of town. I didn't expect the car to break down. My grandson and I tried to find shelter, but the rain came too fast." Martha nodded. "The roads out here can be cruel. You're lucky you found this place. It's not often anyone passes by." The boy looked up. "Ma'am, your house smells like cinnamon. It reminds me of my mom's kitchen." The words pierced her heart. Martha smiled weakly. "Thank you, dear. It's the wood I burn. My late husband planted those trees himself." The boy smiled back. Something about his innocent eyes warmed the hollow inside her heart that had been empty for years. As they ate a small meal together, Martha learned their names. The old woman was Eleanor, and the boy was Jamie. They said they were traveling from the city, but didn't share much more. When the night grew late, Martha offered them her spare room. "It's not much," she said shyly, "but the blankets are warm." Eleanor squeezed her hand gratefully. "You have a kind soul, Martha. Not many would open their door to strangers in a storm." Martha chuckled softly. "When you've known loneliness, kindness becomes a habit." The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains, and the storm was gone as if it had never been. Martha woke early and found Jamie feeding her chickens. He had borrowed her old boots that were far too big for him, and his laughter echoed in the yard like music she hadn't heard in years. "You're quite the helper, young man," she said, smiling. He grinned. "Grandma says helping others makes your heart stronger." Martha's eyes softened. "Your grandma's right. My husband used to say that too." Inside, Eleanor was already making breakfast. Or rather, trying to. Martha laughed when she saw the mess of flour and eggs on the counter. "Oh, you're brave to challenge my old stove." Eleanor smiled, embarrassed. "It's been years since I cooked anything myself. My hands aren't what they used to be." Martha helped her, and soon the kitchen filled with laughter and the smell of pancakes. It was the first time in years Martha felt her house truly alive again. After breakfast, Eleanor tried to insist on paying her. "You've done more than enough, Martha. Please let us give you something for your trouble." But Martha shook her head firmly. "You owe me nothing. If anything, you've given me more than you know." Eleanor looked puzzled. "Given you?" Martha nodded, her voice trembling. "Company, warmth, the sound of someone laughing in this house again." For a moment the two women looked at each other, one hiding her wealth, the other her loneliness, both finding something precious the world had taken from them. Later that day, a black luxury car rolled up outside Martha's house. Two men in suits stepped out, rushing toward the porch. "Madam Eleanor!" one of them exclaimed. "We've been searching everywhere. Are you all right?" Martha froze. Eleanor sighed, realizing the truth could no longer be hidden. "I suppose I owe you an explanation," she said quietly. "My family owns several estates in this region. We came to inspect one, but I didn't want anyone to know who we were. I wanted Jamie to see how simple people live, how kindness still exists without money." Martha's mouth fell open. You're the Eleanor Hawthorne? The Hawthorne family?" Eleanor smiled gently. "I am, and I'm deeply grateful, Martha. You welcomed us without knowing who we were, and that means more than all the riches we own." Jamie ran to her and hugged her tightly. "I told Grandma you were special." Tears filled Martha's eyes. "I just did what anyone should." Eleanor turned to her driver. "Bring the car around. We'll return tomorrow." "Return?" Martha repeated, confused. "Yes," Eleanor said. "I have something to discuss with you, something important." Then she and Jamie left, waving as the car disappeared down the muddy road, leaving Martha standing on her porch, heart full and trembling. She didn't know it yet, but that stormy night had changed her life forever. The morning after Eleanor and Jamie left, Martha's house felt painfully quiet again. The laughter that had filled the kitchen, the sound of Jamie's small footsteps, the warmth of shared company, it had all vanished with the departing car. She tried to distract herself by tending to her garden, but every flower seemed duller, every corner of the house lonelier. She had lived alone for years, but now it felt different. The silence hurt more. That evening she sat by the window with her tea, staring at the winding dirt road that led to town. "They said they'd come back," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling with both hope and disbelief. The next day passed, then another. By the third morning she convinced herself it had been nothing. Maybe they were just being polite. Rich people had their own world, far away from the likes of her. She sighed and began to accept it, whispering, "It was nice while it lasted." Just then, she heard the faint rumble of an engine outside. She froze, her heart racing. Peeking through the curtain, she saw a sleek black car rolling up her path, the same one. She hurried to the door just as Jamie burst out of the car, running up the porch. "Miss Martha!" he shouted, waving a bunch of flowers. Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Jamie! Oh, you came back!" Eleanor stepped out of the car, smiling warmly. "I told you we would, my dear. May we come in?" Martha laughed. Of course. This old house has missed you both." Inside, Jamie darted to the kitchen, remembering exactly where everything was. "Can I help make tea again?" he asked eagerly. Martha chuckled. "You're a fast learner, young man." As the kettle whistled, Eleanor sat at the table, her elegant hands folded in her lap. Her tone grew gentle but serious. "Martha, I haven't stopped thinking about what you did for us. You took in two strangers with no hesitation, offered warmth and food without asking a single question. That kind of heart is rare, even more so in this world." Martha smiled shyly. "It was nothing, really. You needed help, and I had a roof to share." Eleanor reached into her handbag and pulled out an envelope. "I want to repay you for your kindness." Martha's eyes widened. "Oh, no, please. I told you before I didn't do it for money." Eleanor nodded. "I know. That's why it means so much, but please hear me out. This isn't charity, it's a gift and an opportunity." She slid the envelope across the table. Martha hesitated before opening it. Inside were a few papers, official-looking documents, and a letter written in graceful handwriting. As she read, Her hands began to tremble. "Eleanor." "What is this?" Eleanor smiled softly. "That's the deed to your land. I bought the surrounding property last year, but I noticed your house sits right in the heart of it. The only one that was never sold. I want to help you rebuild this place, expand it, maybe turn it into something beautiful." Martha blinked in confusion. "Rebuild? I don't understand." Eleanor leaned forward. "You have warmth, kindness, and heart, things that can't be bought. I want to fund a small lodge here. A rest home for travelers, the elderly, anyone who needs shelter. You'd manage it, of course. It will be your place, Martha, your home, and your purpose." For a moment, Martha couldn't speak. Her lips trembled, and her eyes welled up. You do that? For me?" Eleanor nodded. "You did more for me than you know. You reminded me of something money made me forget: humanity." Jamie ran over, hugging Martha tightly. "Grandma says good people deserve good things." Martha laughed through her tears, holding the boy close. "Oh, Jamie, you're a blessing." Weeks passed, and true to her word, Eleanor's people began rebuilding the old house. The crumbling porch was replaced with sturdy wood, the walls painted in warm colors. The garden expanded into a small, lush courtyard. Martha couldn't believe her eyes as the place transformed before her. Neighbors who had long ignored her began visiting again, curious about the sudden construction. Some even offered to help, drawn by the kindness in the air. Every weekend, Eleanor and Jamie would visit, bringing gifts, books, and laughter. Martha taught Jamie how to plant vegetables, how to feed the chickens, and how to bake bread the old-fashioned way. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Eleanor turned to her and said, "You know, Martha, I used to think wealth was power, but now I see true wealth is peace. And you've given that to me." Martha smiled, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "And you've given me a reason to smile again. I thought my life was over when my husband passed. I was just waiting for the end. But now I wake up with something to look forward to." Eleanor reached over and squeezed her hand. "Then we've both been blessed." Months later, the newly built lodge opened, the Haven at Elmsridge, a cozy rest home nestled between the hills, welcoming travelers, widows, and orphans alike. The sign at the entrance read, "Kindness is the roof under which every soul can rest." Martha ran the place with grace and humility. Word spread quickly, not about the Hawthorns' wealth, but about the woman who sheltered strangers in a storm and built a home for anyone who needed one. Jamie often helped around the lodge, always wearing that same bright smile. Locals adored him, unaware that the cheerful boy sweeping the porch was heir to one of the richest families in the territory. Eleanor continued to visit, her health improving, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She often said, "This place has healed me more than any doctor ever could." One autumn evening, as the leaves turned gold, Martha sat by the fireplace with Eleanor and Jamie. The guests were all settled in their rooms, the soft crackle of fire filling the silence. Eleanor looked around and said quietly, "I sometimes wonder what would have happened if that storm hadn't brought us to your door." Martha smiled. "Then maybe I'd still be sitting alone, staring at an empty cup of tea." Jamie giggled. "And I'd never have learned how to make real pancakes." They all laughed, the sound echoing through the warm wooden walls. Eleanor raised her cup. To the storm that changed everything. Martha clinked her cup against hers. And to the kindness that made it all worth it. The fire crackled brighter, casting golden light over their faces. 3 souls from different worlds, united by fate, love, and the simple power of compassion.